democracy is dangerous.
So I'm not going to say much to introduce myself. I'm a member of 350, of Physicians for Social Responsibility, of CCL. I'm very promiscuous in the organizations I join. But today I represent the climate mobilization that I believe has a very special thing to offer, a very special metaphor to offer, and a very special urgency to offer. As you all know, that globally we are seeing record droughts. We are seeing the kinds of, so France goes under, Paris is underwater, and West Virginia's underwater, sometimes Texas is underwater, Alaska's on fire. We all know that we're experiencing something that humanity, for sure, has never seen before. And we're seeing it more and more abruptly, so that the initial the Keeling curve, whatever you want to call, the hockey stick, all of those things are becoming almost optimistic. We are here then today. I'm a physician, trained in public health. We're here as what I would call first responders to humankind's greatest emergency. This is it. To me, it makes the bubonic plague, and I don't mean to be coarse here or anything, but it makes it look kind of like a pimple. The Spanish flu took out tens of millions of people all around the world. Compared to what could happen, it's nothing. And as much as I love treating patients, I know that if I can get any of you to help join in the urgency of this, I will have a sense that I have done more than I've done all my life, though I treasure those moments and would never have traded them with my patients. So there's a word in Latin, statum, and that means right now, immediately. So if you're watching House or some equally dreadful medical show, and a nurse or doctor or a technician calls out stat, everybody goes there immediately. And that's what we're saying, that we're saying this is an emergent situation. And to talk about it in terms of gradualism is not a good idea. Mobilization calls for an urgent response. Let's talk about locally. And we're going to have speakers that will address the local, as well as those who will address both the local and the global. Here on the streets of Oakland and all around the world, people are dying, and they're dying unnecessarily, even before we talk about climate change. They're related, but the fossil fuels at ground level, whether we're talking ozone, whether we're talking oxides of nitrogen, whether we're talking about, you could go on and on, the polyaromatic hydrocarbons, very small, PM2.5, PM10 particles. They are killing people right now, and they have been. And there is environmental injustice in that it's been happening longer in communities where there has not been equity. And there will be people today, we have Andrea Soto of Communities for a Better Environment, who'll be addressing that and the climate issue, because they are part of, all linked. And we'll also have Reverend Ken Chambers of Westside Baptist Church, once again addressing those issues. And of course we have globally, we talked about what global weirding is what it's become called. It probably shouldn't even be called climate change. It's climate disruption. It's happening rapidly. And let me insert that if I didn't think if I thought we had no chance at all, I simply wouldn't be here. I'd be at home, I don't know, binging on Netflix and chocolate truffles, but I'm here because I think we still have a chance. In fact, I believe that strongly. What can we do to support a livable climate? The first thing is we have to admit the truth. And the truth is that the actual carbon budget that we have left, and I think that we all have maybe seen the graph, and we all used to use the graph that came out several years ago that said we had something like 525 gigatons of carbon equivalent that we could burn safely. My answer to that would involve an expletive. There's no carbon we can burn safely. We're in climate change. It's not something that will happen, not to our grandchildren, unless, not just to our grandchildren, not just to our children. It's happening to us, and it's happening now. And bright-siding it, saying, we're going to make it, We'll do it gradually. By 2050, we'll have cut back 50% of all fossil fuels. We have materials at our table that the young man there, Isaac Silk, you'll get to know him, I hope, will show you some of those data and some of the ways psychologically that this can be dealt with and effectively and in emergency mode. We call upon the Congress, they'll laugh, we call upon the President, we call upon all aspects of the federal government and local governments to get involved. And although, you know, there's a lot of ideas that it can't be done, well, there are many occasions it has been done. World War II, we were isolationists, we were pretty much unprepared for what was about to come. And yet, within a few years, there were armamentarium, there was an armamentarium, there were ships, there were planes, they were built, some of it in Richmond, an amazing amount in Richmond, and there were several a day, ships being built. We came, there was a sacrifice at home, there were war bonds, we would ask for climate bonds, there were victory gardens, and of course the armamentarium to us are renewable energies and implementing them. Some of them are already off the shelf and ready to go. It's the political will and the lying by corporate fossil fuel interests and their bedfellows that is keeping it from happening. We need to make a demand. So we have the example of World War II. We can come a little forward in time, and we stopped, my generation helped to stop a war in Vietnam. And we forced the federal government, in this case, to do the opposite. Let's come forward and honor this day of pride. And remember that Larry Kramer helped to found a group and made that group stronger, a group called ACT UP, AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power. What he did was, like in Malvina Reynolds' song, he wasn't nice. He got in people's faces. He had very creative, very brilliant, direct action, sometimes with arrest, sometimes without. Great things, including picketing churches that were anti-gay, including shutting down the trading floor of the New York City Stock Exchange. A good idea on many levels. Well, I won't go on about that one. But the point is, he forced a federal government that was denying AIDS, wouldn't even say the word during the Reagan administration. And he got the federal government to respond in a way that we developed drugs, and many of the people, many of our friends are alive now because of highly effective antiretroviral therapy. I never thought I'd see that in my lifetime, but it happened. We can, from pressure from below, hard pressure, and pressure to, and also reaching out to communities, to friends, to joining with the organizations that are represented here today, and others too, like CBE, like 350 Bay Area, and of course with us, we will help show how you can put that kind of pressure on. Then, how do you stay sane? Now, I want to talk to you about a thing called about emergency mode. And one of our founders actually wrote a nice piece that you should take a look at. It's free. And she talks about emergency mode, and it's something I've known all of my adult life. If any of you work in medicine, I know some of you do, and the operator calls a code blue, which means that a patient in one room or another is experiencing a cardiopulmonary arrest, a pre-designated team runs to that room. And if you've ever seen it, it's almost choreographed. Nobody is panicked. There's never a place for panic. What happens is we enter into a state, sort of a zone, of being involved, focused, in clarity, in unity of purpose, to save the life of that person. You forget yourself. In some ways, there's almost I don't want to say joy, but a meditative state on behalf of life. So no, I don't want everybody to panic and go and burn down the nearest federal building. There are ways this can be done, but it must be done with force. And just so in closing, I'd like to say that we must work with each other, divestment, of course, of all of the drives of regenerative farming, ways to draw down carbon. That could be our, I hate these words, Manhattan Project. But there are ways that include regenerative farming and biochar and other natural means. But what about, there was a breakthrough, I think, in Iceland about being able to draw carbon down and put it into rocks. We need that kind of mobilization to, on behalf of life. This is not a violent war. This is a war to end violence against life. So with that, I say, I want to introduce some wonderful speakers, and I would also like to say that I thank you very much for coming. I hope that you get to work. I hope you work with all the groups here, and I hope you go to work stat. Thank you very much. We are extremely honored to have, well, he says, I left my introduction, my formal introduction, but that he's a farm boy who plays the guitar. Here's what he's going to say.
This is your job. I'm a farm boy with a guitar who likes a good ball game and human rights.
And he's a lot more. I'll be making it, he'll have subsequent sets that I'll talk about the rest, that he won't talk about the multiple awards and the fact that he's a genius. He won't tell you that. He is. So I'd like to introduce Tom Neilson.
In 83 and 84, no, 84 and 5, I worked with the United Nations in Somalia. And one day I got this cable from Geneva reprimanding me for not sending a report. And I went to my superior to whom I had given this report, and I said, I just got this cable that said they didn't, that I didn't send it. And I gave it to him, and he said, well, I didn't send it. And so I asked him the obvious question, which was, and he said, because you told the truth. And you cannot tell the truth. You cannot tell. And we still don't have any, unless you're listening to Intercept News or have read something by Michael Marin, who is a contemporary of mine there. Jeremy Scahill, Dirty Wars, has a bit in there about Somalia, but he doesn't have as much of the history. But it was pretty much all fabricated, 1,500,000 refugees to keep our dictator in power. Used to be our enemies, had a piece of land, like with oil in Iraq, pipeline in Afghanistan. Indians and Mexicans brought out the cavalry, 'cause they were in the way of manifest destiny. Guatemala has bananas, Somalia has oil, Venezuela has democracy that we want to spoil. Cuba had cigars and rum, Filipino sugar cane. Colombia had the isthmus and some kilos of cocaine. But now our enemies are treasonous. They tell the truth, and that's serious. It's adversity, it's mockery, insurgency, hostility, but mostly White House sociopathology. Daniel Ellsberg was once the most dangerous man, foretelling the truth about their war in Vietnam. And Chelsea Manning's murder footage was too graphic, of U.S. conduct clearly psychopathic. It's called whistleblower, and everybody should be knowing about corruption, waste, and abuse. Transparency is treasonous, democracy is dangerous. It's a crime to tell the truth. Edward Snowden told us all what we already knew, how the NSA is taking notes on everything we do. Is it worse that they are spying or covered up with lying with their files on where we go and with who? It's cold whistleblowing, everybody should be knowing about corruption, waste and abuse. Transparency is treasonous, democracy is dangerous. It's a crime to tell the truth. Kiriakou fingered Brennan for torture in Guantanamo. Tom Drake, the NSA, for $1 billion a dough. Jeffrey Sterling, CIA, sabotaging nuclear blueprints to Iran. They were passing. It's called whistleblowing. Everybody should be knowing about corruption, waste and abuse. Transparency is treasonous, democracy is dangerous. It's a crime to tell the truth. I was on the road in Buffalo on my way to Canada to go to a gig in Detroit. Seems they had me in a file as long as a quarter mile about the songs I sing and every joint. They took my passport, put my truck in detention, and submitted me to interrogation. I escaped captivity, now only outlaws will be free living outside the law, in and out of this nation. Also blowing, everybody should be knowing about corruption, waste and abuse. Transparency is treasonous, democracy is dangerous. It's a crime to tell the truth. Transparency is treasonous, civil liberties are dangerous. It's a crime to tell the truth.